The Bad Batch, Episode 15, The Cavalry has arrived. Omega and the other children take advantage of the disruption at Tantiss base and escape in order to free the Zillo Beast, which proves to be the perfect distraction, as it goes on a rampage throughout the base, wiping out the visions of Imperials one after another. I really like how the Zillo Beast scenes were presented, as they're basically throwbacks to old school kaiju horror films such as Godzilla. And that's pretty much what the Zillo Beast is in Star Wars after all, so it fits. And seeing this chaos unfold, Hunter, Wrecker, and Crosshair ask themselves who among Omega or Echo would be capable of unleashing the Zillo Beast on Tantiss, with the trio all agreeing that it had to be Omega, which, well, was kind of forced and awkward, I will admit, as for all they know, Omega would still be stuck in a prison cell inside, while Echo actually, has access to the main base plans after infiltrating it. Not to mention, Echo himself also tells Emery that releasing the Zillo Beast would be his own go-to plan as well. So I feel there was no reason to downplay Echo in this instance and only to uplift Omega, which, again, it only felt forced. Anyway, Crosshair suggests that he heads into the base himself, warning the rest that if they all go in, they're not gonna make it out. But of course, Hunter and Wrecker turn down Crosshair's sacrificial offer and insist on going into Tantiss base together. Which, okay, but I feel with Crosshair offering to sacrifice himself is because of his own belief that he didn't deserve to survive. So this would be to atone for his past sins, but, sure, I can also get behind Hunter and Wrecker simply not allowing him to do something like that no matter what. Maybe if it was some other two guys, then sure, but these two, yeah, they're not gonna let Crosshair sacrifice himself just like that. And I can respect that. The Batch soon take advantage of the chaos resulting from the Zillo Beast having escaped from the facility, and they proceed to infiltrate the base themselves. However, it also seems that Hemlock was ready for this and always planned for such a scenario, as he then unleashes his CX operative squad, whom not only bear similarities to the Bad Batch themselves, but also on an interesting note, the song that plays during their awakening is awfully similar to the same track that plays when the Dark Troopers are deployed in The Mandalorian. I wonder if that's intentional. Suffice to say, the Batch get their butts handed to them by Hemlock's CX squad and are soon captured. To add insult to injury, Crosshair also ends up having his shooting arm chopped off by CX2, which, I guess it's safe to say that he now won't be having any more issues with his trigger arm shaking anymore, eh? Meanwhile, Echo and Emery find Omega and the children, with Emery agreeing to take the other kids to safety off-world, while Echo and Omega stay behind to free Nala Se, Rampart, and the other clone prisoners. While everyone heads out to rescue the Batch, Nala Se instead goes to destroy the facility's data on her cloning experiments, as she sees this her way to protect Omega and prevent the Empire from using her research ever again. But Rampart ends up following her, which sees him learn all about Hemlock's work on Project Necromancer, and then later kills Nala Se in the process, as he plans to instead use the research for leverage with the Empire. Which, while dastardly, I can't blame the guy too much for this, as from his point of view, he can either seriously ruin the Empire or gain favor with such information, like getting his old life back with this data, which I'm sure he would love to do. But before Nala Se dies, she uses a thermal detonator to destroy the data and kills Rampart in the process. And just like that, Rampart is no more. I said he wouldn't survive, and he didn't survive. Meanwhile, Hemlock attempts to convert Hunter, Wrecker, and Crosshair into CX operatives, torturing them as his first course of action. But luckily, Echo, Omega, and the other clones arrive just in time and a firefight ensues. And this was great, as this is pretty much the closest thing I think we'll ever get to see in a clone uprising happen on screen. And it's pretty brutal, with majority of the clones being taken out by gas, leaving Echo alone to carry. And he does so impressively well, only to increase his odds with Wrecker then helping him out, which sees them free the batch and defeat the existing operatives. Knowing Tantiss base is done for, Hemlock takes Omega hostage and tries fleeing off-world together with Scorch. But they don't get too far, as Hunter and Crosshair, while both injured and tired, end up wasting Scorch, which, I gotta say, I know his role in the series was just to be Hemlock's top goon and all, but dang, he got treated dirty here. Went out like some kind of punk. I don't know, I was kind of expecting more from Scorch, but okay, fine. Then on the flip side, Omega ends up helping the batch gun down and kill Hemlock. And yeah, that was a clean death, which to be fair he deserved, as he was a great villain, often only losing due to the people around him being the ones to make the mistakes, which is worth noting. And it's a bit of a shame that we won't get to see him in live action, but his death here made a lot of sense and it was great. Plus, I just couldn't see the big bad surviving in the series finale. It just kinda had to happen. Can you imagine a finale where everyone on the Bad Batch, the good guys, Hemlock, Scorch, they all survive? It would just be stupid. Now with Hemlock gone, the clones all escape to Pabu, only for the Empire's reinforcements to seconds later arrive right afterwards. And this is where we get our first glimpse of a proper Star Destroyer 1 in the Clone Wars animation style. And it's not only for the cool factor, but also that it bridges the gap between the eras, with its debut here being essentially the killing blow of the Republic era. With there being nothing left to recover on Wayland, Tarkin decides to shut down Tantiss base and diverts its fundings to Project Stardust, aka the Death Star, which was probably the easiest decision of his life considering he seemed to find Tantiss and Project Necromancer a complete waste of time and resources. Which, well, yeah, him being kept in the dark on the true intentions of the project will do that. As for Tantiss base, it looks like it's shut down for good, which seems a bit of a bummer that Thrawn won't be able to make use of it later on. But then again, that's probably for the best, mainly because of the Zillo Beast still remaining on Wayland and essentially becoming the new Mega Apex Predator there, which for all we know will likely completely mess up the ecosystem there as well. Later on Pabu, the clones rejoice in their victory and newfound freedom, with Emery even deciding to join Echo and Rex in their quest to help other clones, such as relocating them to Pantora, as she sees this as a way of redeeming herself for her past actions with the Empire. We're then left off with the Bad Batch celebrating with Omega, who all decide to remain on Pabu and live happily ever after. And scene. Yeah, that's the ending right there. Well, not quite, as per usual, we do get a short epilogue showing later on an adult Omega sharing a moment with an older, now retired Hunter, right before she decides to leave to join the rebellion as a pilot. It's a short but wholesome scene, and I do like how Omega's ship now looks to be like a cobbled up using parts from an Omnicron class shuttle, presumably the Marauder, and if it works, it works. But what I didn't care for was Omega still sounding like she's a 10-year-old. As, well, naturally I was expecting Omega's voice to be more like Emery's voice at the end, since, you know, she's older now. So, other than that being weird, I thought everything else was alright. But boy, what a ride. overall, I think it's fair to say that this was a very safe, Disney-esque ending. Kind of like the Rebels finale too, now that I think about it, but even that one had some sacrifices and not the most happiest ending, so yeah, this one is definitely more safer. For the most part, I left the Bad Batch finale somewhat underwhelmed. Now, sure, granted, the animation and music were phenomenal as always, no arguments there. And there was plenty of tension and battle scenes that made the episode feel worthy of being a finale. However, at the same time, I felt that the writing used a lot of conveniences to get by, all to make sure that Omega gets everything done her way, the Empire loses at all costs, and the Bad Batch survive despite all the odds against them. And for a darker and grittier take on Star Wars animation, I don't think it meshed too well. Sure, you were able to get away with it on Rebels, which had a very different tone and audience too, but for this, it stood out too much for me and not in a positive way. Now that I think about it, I feel like this was the problem that the entire series had. Despite the crazy potential the Bad Batch had, even reaching some highs a few times, some really good highs, majority of the time it played everything safe and had a lot of It didn't take risks with the story and somehow raised more questions than answers. In addition, it also feels like such wasted writing not having Rex show up in the finale, especially the fact that his network was so adamant about finding Tantiss and freeing the imprisoned clones there, only to not have anything whatsoever to do with the rescue is very disappointing. I also can't say that I'm impressed with the decision not to kill anyone off. Well, aside from Nala Se and no-name clones, no one on the good guys died. Which, in an insane mission like this, you would at the very least expect one casualty, like, come on. Rebels at least had Gregor biting the dust in the final battle, let's not forget that. And speaking of which, I kinda feel the same for the whole of Season 3 in general. There was so much potential for greater and better things, and while we did of course get some really good episodes, it still wasn't anywhere near enough to make this season stand out as it should. Plus, it's also now clear that Ventress's cameo didn't amount to anything and wasn't really needed. Rather, was just thrown into Season 3 as filler for a backdoor retcon for a different project. Because as I originally said, if they seriously wanted to bring Ventress back so badly, then okay, fine, but give her a purpose and do so with a good explanation for her survival, which they didn't do neither. Honestly, they should have just left her fate from the books alone, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, to cap things off, aside from the many plot lines that were left unanswered and not wrapped up, Season 3 and its finale, I would say, were fine. Not fantastic or anything super exciting to write home about, but just fine enough. I enjoyed my time for the most part with the show, but the entire time I was hoping for more, for them to take that next step forward, which unfortunately never came and now never will. And that was my take on this episode of The Bad Batch and Season 3 in general. Let me know what you all thought about the episode in the comments down below, and if you haven't already, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.